Okay, I think we should start. Let me just. Okay, we will start. I hope everything is fine. Om Bhadram Karne Vishunuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraha Sthirairangai Tuštuvagum Sastanubihi Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vruddhashavaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedaha Swasti nastarkshyo arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatir dadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So every Upanishad, as we know already, is about Brahma Vidya. That is the core objective of the Upanishad. It tries to bring to us, explain to us what is this Brahma Vidya, what is Brahman, and this is the central theme. So every Upanishad has its own ways, its own methodology to introduce this concept, because by its very nature, it's very difficult to explain something which you cannot see, which you cannot, using your indriyas, you cannot grasp it. All these are there. So essentially, it's a little difficult problem to solve. But each Upanishad has its own ways by which it tries to somehow bring the discussion into Brahman, Brahma Vidya, why we should go, know the Brahman and all that things. Now, if we need to describe Brahman, the Upanishads, our scriptures, particularly Upanishads, because Brahma Vidya is very much the subject matter of Upanishads, so you find it more in Upanishads. So the Upanishads have generally taken two approaches to somehow describe Brahman. One is called Tatastha Lakshana. I have spoken about Tatastha Lakshana several times in the past, in several other lectures also. And the other is called Swarupa Lakshana. Tatastha Lakshana is, instead of showing an object A or an entity A, you show entity B and try to create some kind of an adjacency. That is called Tatastha Lakshana. You describe B and link it to A. As the frequent example is, if you ask where is somebody's house, then you say there you see there is a coconut tree. So the second house from there. So you actually are able to show coconut tree. And from there you create a certain adjacency and linkage to the ultimate entity you want to describe. So this is called Tatastha Lakshana. The other Lakshana is Swarupa Lakshana. Somehow you try to describe the Swarupa of whatever entity. So in our case, we are talking about Brahman. So in Taittiriya Upanishad, for example, the second chapter, Brahmanandavalli, actually describes the Brahman. So it's called Brahmanandavalli. And in that chapter, there is a Swarupa Lakshana. It starts with that. It says, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. That's what it says. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So that is called Swarupa Lakshana. So in Taittiriya Upanishad, the Brahman is described with simple Swarupa Lakshana, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Brahman is Satyam, Brahman is Jnanam, Brahman is Ananta. So that is how it described in the Taittiriya Upanishad. Now we saw a mantra last week. We saw only the first line. We are yet to see the second line. So this is the mantra in Mundakopanishad, which in a way brings the Swarupa Lakshana of Brahman. Because the rest of the discussion is going to flow only from this. Therefore, this mantra is very important. So let us look at that mantra. We saw the first line last class. So we will continue with the second line and go to the following mantras. So this is the mantra which we saw. Yat tat adreshyam, agrahyam, agotram, avarnam, achakshushotram, tat apani padam, nityam vibhum sarvagatam, susukshmam, tadavyayam, yad bhutayonim paripashyanti dhiraha. So there is a certain Swarupa Lakshana here of Brahman. It says Yat Tat Adreshyam, that which is not visible. The moment you say it is not visible, essentially what is implied here is it's not just the eye, even it is not heard. All those are implied here. It cannot be heard, it cannot be smelt, etc., etc. So basically it is saying it is beyond the reach of jnanendriyas. Then agrahyam, that which cannot be grasped. When you say grasped, again, you need the limbs to grasp something. If you have to grasp this mobile, you need to hold it, take it with your hands or something like that. So therefore, this agrahyam in a way indicates that Brahman is not available for the karmendriyas also. In adreshyam, we said it is not available for jnanendriyas. In agrahyam, we are saying that it is not available for karmendriyas, which means it is not really available for some kind of a transactional, sort of things that we want to do. Then it said agotram. See, gotra means your father, your forefather, like that. When you say agotram, that means it doesn't have an origin. There isn't like something like, father, father's father, father's father, some mula, Rishi mula, Nadi mula. No, it is beyond all that. So it is called agotram and avarnam. See, varnam means, because one is the chaturvarnyam, that is one meaning of varnam. But varnam also means color or attribute. So it says it is beyond attribute. Now what is indicated here? What is indicated here is it is demat. It doesn't belong to the domain of material. If there is a material, you can say it is black, it is red, it is tall, it is short, it is thick, it is hot, it is cold. These are attributes. So moment you say avarnam, what it says is it doesn't belong to the domain of materiality, or it doesn't have upadhi dharma. It is nirupadhi. See, when moment you say upadhi, that means you are bringing a constraint now. That is how you can get a upadhi. Air has no meaning. Moment you conceal it with the four walls, that space actually has meaning. The space as such has no meaning. Meaning it is formless, shapeless, and so on. Moment you put four walls into it and then try to condition the space, then the space takes a varna, a certain attribute. You may call it as a living room or a bathroom or a bedroom or whatever, or a classroom or a chikitshala, hospital, whatever, or a library. So when you say avarnam, it means it is nirupadi. It is not conditionable with our normal descriptions of whatever. So moment you say that, obviously chakshu is not there, shrotram is, I mean, it doesn't have all these gadgets because it is nirupadi. So chakshu is not there, shrotram is not there, pani pada, the upper limbs, lower limbs, all those are simply not there. So in a way, a certain Swarupa Lakshana is described in the first line, in which it clearly establishes it is not available for karmendriyas, it is not available for jnanendriyas, it is anadi and ananta, doesn't follow under any upadhi dharma, and therefore it doesn't have any of those physicalities and gadgets that we are used to, these bells and whistles called indriyas and eyes and ears and upper limbs and lower limbs, all those are not something which you can attribute or attach to a Brahman. Now the second line says Nityam, Vibhum, Sarvagatam, Susukshmam, Tat Abhyayam, Yat Bhuta Yonim. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 attributes, 6 descriptions are there. First of all, it says it is Nityam. And it is Nityam means it exists. It is not that it existed today, it did not exist yesterday, and it will not exist tomorrow. But this is the definition. In Taittiriya Upanishad, when it says Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, the definition of Satyam is that which exists in all the three kalas. It existed yesterday, it will exist today, it will exist tomorrow also. That is called Satyam. Which things that don't belong to this definition is not Satya. For example, the world is not Satya. World may be Sat. It may be an existence. But it is not true for all the three periods, because there is a pralaya, there is a utpadana, all those happen. Sarga, Visarga and Upasarga, all those things happen. Therefore, Nityam means it is the core definition of Satyam. A vastu which is there in Trikala. Bhuta Bhavya Bhavishyat. Sarveshu Kaleshu Sada Bhavishyati iti karanena Nityam. Satyam ityapi vaktum shaknumah. We can even say Satyam. Then Vibhum. Vibhum means manifestation. Vibhuti. That's why, chapter 10 of Bhagavad Gita is called Vibhuti Yoga. Vibhuti is manifestation actually. So Vibhum Bhavati. Visishtena Bhavati iti Vibhu. Bhavati means exists. Visishtena Bhavati. So Vibhu. Especially it is manifesting, and it is full of manifestation. That's why it says Sahasra Sirsha Purushaha Sahasraksha Sahasrapat Sabomim Vishwato Vritva. So Purusha Sutta describes it in another way. How do you say, Vishwatas Chakshuruta Vishwato Muko Vishwato Hata Uta Hata Vishwatas Pat Sambahubhyam Sampatatre Dyava Pritivi Janaya Ekakshan Memana Shivashankalpamastu. It is also there in Mahanarayana Upanishad. So different Shruti explains Vibhum, that which exists. Another way to understand is it provides the isness to the reality. See, if you have table is there. When you say table is there, that is coming from where? The is coming from the wood. If you remove the wood, the table is not there. If you say necklace is there, the gold is there, the necklace is there. the stud is there. In all these, the isness is provided by gold. So gold is the karana and the ornaments are karya, right? So in a way, Brahman provides isness. When you say something is there, what pervades into it to provide the isness? If you take this shirt, the cotton or the fiber provides the isness. If you remove all the cotton from this shirt, there is no shirt. There is no notion of shirt at all. So in the same way, by Vibhum and Sarvagatam, that it manifests everywhere, it essentially says Brahman is the Karana Tattva and the Jagat, all those are Karya. So that is what is coming through this description of Vibhum and Sarvagatam. Susukshmam. It is not Sukshmam, Susukshmam. Utterly subtle, extraordinarily subtle, you can say. And why is it extraordinarily subtle? Because we already said it is a demat. The first line fully said it is not, doesn't belong to any Upadhi Dharma. It cannot be put into any of the materiality. The moment you put something to materiality, then there is a conditioning. Right? Now I'll give you a simple example. Moment you say currency is purely looked at from a material perspective, then you have a coin, you have a 5 rupee note, a 20 rupee note, a 100 rupee note, 200 rupee note, etc., etc. Moment you confine it to a material medium, then it is limited. Now this money is the money with me, cannot be with you. The money that is here cannot be in Bombay. All these problems come moment you have something in a material form. But today we have actually removed currency from the material form. We have put it on the ether in terms of bits of data. That's why we are able to use our GPay, we are able to use our UPI and do a Deeparadhana and then just pay the money. So therefore, anything which you create, take it out of the material medium, it becomes subtle. Now money is, technically speaking, money is available here because this room in which I am sitting has a Wi-Fi connection. So therefore, I can actually capture money from here and I can transfer money in this ether. I can transfer money from one place to another place. All these are possible. Similarly, newspaper has gone out of the material medium. As long as it is in the material medium, it was conditioned. Moment you make it a bits of data and available as a e-paper, then it's available everywhere. All the descriptions will work. Nityam, Vibhum, Sarvagatam, Susukshmam, everything will work. Railway ticket has become a demat. The book has become an e-book now. So that is the best example. So moment you make something demat, it will become susukshma. It becomes very subtle. And only in a certain way you can capture it. Only in a certain way you can recognize it and so on. And so it is susukshmam, sarvagatam, vibhum, nityam. All these are because of that. And avyayam, tad avyayam. Tad avyayam. It's not vyaya. It is not something which can be expended and exhausted, destroyed, or consume it and that's it. There's no wastage there. I mean, it is evergreen and it's always there. So tat avyayam. So it now says nityam vibhum sarvagatam susukshmam tat avyayam. Then it says yat bhuta yonim. This is the most important thing. It says that is the yoni for Bhuta. Yoni means womb. The yoni of a child is the mother's womb, right? So yoni means womb. So now the Swarupa Lakshana of Brahman is Yat Bhuta Yonim. Bhuta is not just living beings. Bhuta means the physical reality, including living, non-living, everything. Including the Panchabhutas, everything is called Bhuta. And Bhutam Yonim. That is actually the Bhuta Yoni. Now, this is the most important Swarupa Lakshana, which is going to be described in great detail, because now we are talking about Karana Vidya. The Karana for the entire Bhuta. is Brahman. Now we may be wondering, why did Angiras actually bring this point? Because what was the question that Shaunaka asked? He said, Kasmin Vijnate Sarvavidam Vijnatam Bhavati. That was the question he asked. And para, all that he said. But the point here is, if you know what is the primordial source of everything, of the reality that we are aware of, that indeed answers Kasmin Vijnate Sarvavidam Vijnatam. That indeed will answer by knowing that I will be known, because the Karana Vidya comes out of the Karya Vidya comes out of the Karana Vidya. So that is why Bhuta Yoni. That another Sarupa Lakshana of Brahman is, it is the Hiranyagarbha, whatever you want to call it. It is the primordial Om out of which this whole world of reality sprouted, came out. And then the mantra ends by saying, Paripashyanti Dhiraha. Dhiras, those who are all, have gone, have seen through it, have had this experience, have experienced it for themselves, they are able to see it like that. And Paripashyanti. See, Pari, the word Pari, Pashyanti is see. Pari is a word which is used to describe, in Sanskrit, everywhere, circumference. That's why Parinama is circumference. Pariyatan. Transport is called Pariyatan because it goes everywhere. That's why, this is the Delhi Pariyatan Vibhag or Nigam or whatever, Delhi Transport Corporation. Naidali Pariyatan. The Pari means everywhere. So Paripashyanti. Paripashyanti means these wise people, Dhiraha, they are able to see these Sarupa Lakshana of Brahman everywhere. Which means they live through it, they experience it day in and day out. Now, all these mantras, the mantra that you see here, which is a very important mantra, which gives the entire Sarupa Lakshana in its own ways, different from other Upanishads, is something which you see everywhere. Bhagavad Gita has discussed all these. So let us look at equivalent shlokas from Bhagavad Gita. And before that, we look at one shloka from Svetashvara Upanishad, which also talks about Apanipadam. Look at this Svetashvara Upanishad. It says, Apanipado Javano Grahita Pashyati Achakshuhu Pashyatya Chakshuhu Sashanotya Karnaha Saveti Vedyam Natasyasti Veta Tamahuragryam Purusham Mahantam. Apanipado Javano Grihita Pashyatya Chakshus Sashanotya Karnaha Saveti Vedyam Natasyasti Veta Tamahuragryam Purusham Mahantam. Apanipadaha. Brahman is without Pani and Pada. Exactly what this Mundakopanishad says, the same thing it is saying here. Apanipadaha Javano Grihita. It goes and grasps everything. Pashyati. It sees everything, but without eyes. It doesn't have an eye because it is part of everything. Seeing means what? It is experiencing everything because it is part of everything. Pashyati achakshuhu saha shrunoti akarnaha. It doesn't have ears, but it hears. How? Because it is pervading everywhere. The speaker is also that, the listener is also that, the seer is also that, the seen is also that. So it doesn't need specifically any of these gadgets. The subject-object difference is not there because it is pervading everywhere. That's why Pashyati achakshuhu shrunoti akarnaha. Doesn't have ears, but it hears. Saveti vedyam. Vedyam is what is to be known. And it knows everything that needs to be known because that is the Karana Vidya. The rest are all only Karya Vidya which came out of it. Na tasyasti veta. There is none who knows him. While it is so widely available everywhere, none meaning ordinary people most of the people, none means almost most of us. Most of us do not know him. We have to make an effort to know him. Tamahu agryam. He is generally referred to as the foremost or the first, because why? Bhuta Yoni. This is the Karana Vidya. That's why it is Agryam. Agryam Purusham Mahantam. Mahantam. It is the great infinite. So the same idea that you see in this mantra, the Swarupa Lakshana is described in Shvetashvara Upanishad in its own way. And Bhagavad Gita has so many shlokas which actually brings this idea differently. Look at here. Najayate mriyate va kadachit nayam bhutva bhavita va nabhuyah ajo nityas sashvatoyam puranah nahanyate hanyamane sharire najayate mriyate. It doesn't have birth, it doesn't have death. So najayate na mriyate va kadachit. Never it happens. There is nothing like it was born sometime and then it was not there. All those are not there. Ayam bhutva bhavitava na bhuyah. It is not something which is born now and again born a little later, again in the future. There is nothing like that because it exists nityam. Ajaha. That's why next line it says ajaha, which is it's not born. It doesn't come through a yoni. It may be the yoni for everything, but it doesn't come through a yoni. Ayonihi. In Lalita Sahasranama, you will find Ayoni as one of the mantra. Ayonir Yoni Nilaya. That's how it will come if you look at it in Lalita Sahasranama. So Ajaha, Nityaha, Sashvataha. It is eternal. Puranaha, ancient. Nahanyate hanyamane sharire. This sharira may go, but it will not go. Because sharira is material. It is not material. It is energy, not spirit. It is not material. It is energy. It is not matter. It is energy in some ways. So therefore, nahanyate hanyamane sharire. The same thing. What we saw in that mantra, you see it in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, this shloka. Look at the next shloka. Achedyoyam adahyoyam akledyo soshya evacha nitya sarvagatastanuhu achaloyam sanatanaha. Chedana is to break. So achedyoyam, this cannot be broken. Why? It doesn't belong to material. It doesn't confine itself to the material plane. So achedyoyam, moment it doesn't belong to the material plane, you cannot burn it. You cannot, put on fire on it. So Addahyoyam, Dahana is not possible. Then it says, I am Akledyaha, you cannot wet it. And Asoshyah, you cannot dry it. So, Sosya is actually to suck and take out. Right? So, basically, what is the first line saying? It is exactly the replica of the current Mundakopanishad. In current Mundakopanishad, in the first line, it said it doesn't have any of the material properties. So that's what it says, Achedyoyam adakyoyam, Akledyo soshe evacha. And the second line, what Mundakopanishad said in mantra 6, same thing it is saying, Nitya sarvagatastanuhu achaloyam sanatanaha. So that's why it is always good to read Gita. Every principle, every concept that you see in the scriptures, in the Upanishads and the Puranas everywhere is all available very beautifully. That's the charm of Bhagavad Gita actually. So the same mantra is now we are able to see it in Bhagavad Gita like this. So the question now, the most important question which Mundakopanishad takes forward, Angiras takes forward, is Bhuta Yoni Paripashyanti, Bhuta Yonim Paripashyanti Dhira. We say that, the great wise people saw that Yoni of all the Bhutas. And Katham Etat Sambhavati, how is it possible? So now the question is, we have now gotten into cosmology now. We have gotten into a question of creation process. We are asking, how did all these Bhutas come? And how did this Brahman actually became the Bhutayoni? So the rest of the next three mantras in Mundakopanishad actually talks about the creation process, because that's the only way Angiras can satisfy the question that Shaunaka asked, which is Kasmin Vijnate Sarvamitam Vijnatam Bhavati. Tell me what is the primordial source from which every knowledge came. So if I know that source, perhaps I may know all the knowledge. And that is why after saying para, all that, Angiras directly came to the point. So starting from the seventh mantra, 7, 8, 9, these three mantras actually portrays the creation process. In other words, it portrays how the Brahman engaged in the world of reality. Every Upanishad describes it. We have seen it so beautifully in Taittiriya Upanishad, if you remember, in Brahmanandavali. So kamayata bahusyam prajayeti satapo tapyata satapas taptva idagam sarvam asrijata. So that Upanishad described it in a particular way. That's the charm of all these Upanishads. They sometimes they have something in common, but each Upanishad approaches it in a different way because the subject matter is very, very difficult. So we need to understand it in more than one ways. Let us see now this mantra 7 in Mundakopanishad is trying to tell us about the creation process. Yatornanabihi srijate grinhate cha yata pritivyam oshadayah sambhavanti yata satah purushat keshalomani tata aksharat sambhavatiha vishvam. So in this mantra it says, how did this Vishwam came? From the Brahman. So let us do a little bit of a Padacheda here. Not much scope is there. It's already in Padacheda only. Yata Urnanabihi. So in Sandhi it became Yatornanabihi. Yata Urnanabihi Srijate Ghrannate Cha Yata Pritivyam Oshadayah Sambhavanti Yata Sataha Purushat Kesha Lomani Tata Aksharat Sambhavati Iha Vishwam. Sambhavati Iha Vishwam. Savarna Dirga. E plus E becomes E. Sambhavati Iha Vishwam. Sambhavati Iha Vishwam. So this Urnanabihi is actually spider. So there are three ideas described here, and then it says, see, there is this structure in Sanskrit, yata tata, yata raja tata praja. We say that, no? In a way, you see this the same way you are seeing that. So that structure is being utilized here. There are three yatas followed by a tata. As you see A, as you see B, as you see C, in the same way D happens. And what is that D? Aksharat Sambhavati Iha Vishwam. From that one which is imperishable, which we saw in the previous mantra, Nityam, Shashvatam, all those, all that. Aksharat Tata, in that way, I have come to the end of the mantra now, the Tata part. Tata, in the same way, Aksharat, from the imperishable, Sambhavati, comes out or, sprouts, Iha Vishwam, this universe. So, Kata, Tata, Tata Aksharat, iti uktavantah, no? So that there are three examples that are given here. First one is Yata Urnanabihi Srijate Ghrannate cha. The spider. It says, just like a spider, weaves its own web. And that is Srijate. It creates the web. So spider is the primordial web designer. Web designers that are working today for Infosys and are all the later recent avatars. Spider is a web designer of that web, not this World Wide Web. It's that web. So anyway, so like Spider, we weaves its own web, and it also withdraws. Sometimes it just sucks it in. So grinnate cha. That is the first example. We'll see these examples in detail. I'm only explaining the example now. In the same way, aksharat sambhavati vishwam. For everything you have to say tata aksharat sambhavati vishwam. Then there is a second example. Yata prithivyam, from the Prithvi. Oshadaya sambhavanti. Oshadi is all this plant kingdom. Essentially, what it says is, just as you find trillion different varieties of plants, plant kingdom, coming out of the earth. Earth is common, meaning it is the same, mud, maybe red soil, black soil, all those are fine. Maybe, as acidity content, maybe more, less, and so on. It's all soil. From the Prithvi, Oshadaya sambhavati, tata aksharat sambhavati vishwam. The same way from akshara, vishwam is coming. That's the second example. Then it gives the third example. Yata sataha. Sat iti padasya panchama vibhakti. Out of a sat purusha. Sat purusha means one who is living. See, in mother tongue, my mother tongue Tamil, settu poitar. They use a word to say somebody is dead. It is not settu poita, it is sat poitu. Sat is gone. When sat is gone, that becomes dead. So here, this is sat purusha, means a living human being. Purusha is not necessarily, male. It is a human being. So as you see, Kesha and Loma. See, Kesha and Loma are two technical terms. Both mean hair. But Kesha is a hair which grows on the head. And Loma is a hair which grows other than the head, rest of the body. So it says, just as Yata Sataha Purushat, out of a living, because, hair doesn't grow on a dead body. That's why it says, Sataha Purushat. Yata Sataha Purushat, Kesha Lomani, that these hairs grow. Tata, in the same way, Aksharat Sambhavati Iha Vishwam. So there are three analogies given in this mantra. We have to analyze each of the analogy separately. And they are very special. They are describing a very important attribute of Brahman. So now we are talking about the creation process. We have gone to cosmology and cosmogony. How this universe came. And of course, modern science is also trying to find that one source. They don't know what is that one source. See, they made molecules. We saw it already. I showed you a pyramid. They thought, carbon, sulfur, boron and oxygen and hydrogen, helium and all that. Then they said they reduced it to elements. Proton, neutron, electron. They did elements. Then out of it, they came to atomic particles. Proton, electron, neutron, and so on. They have now come to a level of subatomic particles, pisons and quarks and so on and so forth. But they have now come to the extent of saying that it's all energy which is manifesting, but they don't know what is that single source of energy. Science is also going on that path. They have been reducing. Still, they find different types of energy. Gravitational energy is there, electromagnetic energy like this. There are these magnetic energy, electromagnetic, gravitational like this. There are basic energy are there. They don't know where from they are coming. So now we are talking about the creation process, because that is the only way you can say yat bhuta yonim paripashyanti dira, how it becomes the bhuta yoni. So let us now understand a little bit of the creation process before we take the first analogy of the spider. So in our scriptures, when you read, what you find is for any I'm not talking about the creation of the universe. Let us talk about the creation of this mobile phone that I am holding it on my hand. Let's talk about this. Any creation requires broadly two sort of inputs. One is called Nimitta Karanam. Nimitta Karanam is the intelligent cause or instrumental cause, whichever way you can call it. There is an intelligence which is required, which includes a person, a know-how, all those things we can call it, and other gadgets which are required. There are instrumental cause. Okay. Then there is a Upadana Karanam, which means if you want to create something physical, you need material. You need to create it out of some material. Samagri is required. So the second one is called Upadana Karanam. Now, just to take a couple of examples, the carpenter may be the Nimitta Karanam. He is the driver of the creation process and with his own gadgets and all that. And the creation may be a wooden furniture. And the Upadana Karanam is wood. Or a goldsmith, if you take. The goldsmith is the Nimitta Karanam. The gold is the Upadana Karanam. The creation may be a stud, a bangle, or a kankan, or necklace, whatever it is, right? So you need a Nimitta Karanam and a Upadana Karanam, and putting them together, you get the creation. Another example could be a potter. His material cause is clay, and what he makes may be either a pot or a terracotta, whatever, some horse or some artifact, whatever it is. So any creation process, broadly, this is a broad, one can get into finer details, but broadly we can understand that in order for a creation to happen, we need an instrumental cause or an intelligent cause or an agency or something like that. And you need a material cause, which is a raw material, some samagri, which is to be transformed using the intelligent cause and so on, and make that final creation. Now, so when you talk about the universe, that also requires an instrumental cause and a material cause leading to a creation. And again, every Upanishad has talked about it. Because creation process is where we will reach our primordial source. If you ask, who am I? It becomes inevitable that we have to talk about the creation process at some point in time. Because who am I? You have to keep tracing. And you have to reach to the cosmogeny or cosmology in some ways. So let us see how Taittiriya Upanishad, we already discussed this whole creation process in Taittiriya Upanishad. Let us try to understand how did Taittiriya Upanishad articulate this idea. Then we'll come to this example of spider, which Mundakopanishad is given here. So Upadana Karanam, this is how Tasmadva etasmad atmana akasha sambhutah akashad vayuhu vayoragnihi agnerapah adbyah prithvi pritivyam oshadayah oshadibhyonnam annat purushah. It talks about how in the process of creation, first material was space, akasha. Then you created vayu. This is what they are doing in Mars. This is exactly what they are doing in modern science. They go to Mars or Moon. They first examine the space. They try to do a detailed study of how the space looks like. Then they ask, are there gases, useful gases? Because if you don't have oxygen, vayoha agnihi will not happen. The fire and the carbon dioxide, all those are part of the space and this thing, akashat vayu, vayoha agnihi. And moment you have agni, then evaporation, condensation process will circulate the water. So agnerapah, then that material was created. Adbyah prithvi. So the prithvi is in fact, everyone is a combination of the previous one. For vayu, you need akasha. Without akasha, there is no vayu. For agni, you need akasha and vayu. For apa, you need akasha, vayu, agni. For prithvi, you need all the four. So it is a add-on set, actually speaking. So adbyah prithvi. Then Prithivyam Oshadayah. Then you created some material things out of the plant kingdom and so on. Oshadi Bhyonnam. The plant kingdom was the source of food for anyone, including the animals and the human beings. So if you eat non-veg also, the animals have to eat actually the plants somewhere in the food cycle. It all starts with the plant. So you have Oshadi Bhyonnam Annat Purusha. So it explains various material causes in that way. And the Nimitta Karana, so Kamayata Bahusyam Prajayeti Satapo Tapyata Satapas Taptva Idagum Sarvam Asrijata Edidam Kincha Tat Srishtva Tadevanupravishat Tadanupravishya Satchatyacha Bhavata. All those are there. So here the Brahman is portrayed as the Nimitta Karana. Sokamayata, he started thinking, developing a desire. And what is that desire? Bahusyam Prajayeti. Let me create multitude of entities and so on. So this is how Taittiriyopanishad has talked about. Now let's come to this first analogy. What is Mundakopanishad trying to tell us? Yata urno nabihi srijate grinnate cha. What is it trying to tell there? So let us look at the first analogy in this mantra. So what is it saying? The analogy is saying that the spider weaves, not waves, weaves the web. There is a typos here. Let me immediately correct it. Okay. Okay. So the spider weaves the web, srijate, out of itself, withdraws the web, grinnate, unto itself. So what is communicated here? What is communicating is the spider is not looking for raw material from outside. When it wants to create its web, it is spitting its own material. It is not bringing, if a bird builds a nest, it brings material from somewhere. It brings sticks, it brings leaves, and then very beautifully it organizes the, all these sticks into a nice nest and all that. Other living beings do it. Spider is very unique. That's why the Upanishad gives that example. And these are not, utopian examples, or examples which you cannot relate to. That's why our scriptures are many times very real. They actually bring examples at hand and make us think. So it says the spider weaves the web out of itself. It brings its own material out of its own body. Maybe it is some kind of a liquid. I don't know. I mean, if you read some science, you will find out. But it spits its own material out and weaves the web like this, so beautifully. Okay. And also it withdraws the web unto itself if it is required. So what is being communicated here? What it is communicating is the spider is both the Nimitta Karana and the Upadana Karanam. Because the spider has the intelligent cause, is the intelligent cause. Spider is also the material cause because it is bringing its own material. So that analogy is explaining to us, it is informing us that there are implications of this example. It says it is possible that there is a single source for the entire creation process. And just as the spider is the single source for its own creation and destruction. Srijate is creation. Krinnate is destruction. Okay. So in the same way, the analogy is actually explaining to us that the entire creation process can happen out of a single source. And the creation and the destruction process belongs to the same source. In this case, the creation and the destruction part of the web belongs only to the spider. In the same way, the Brahman, that's why it is the analogy. And it is a certain kind of manifestation and manifestation. Again, in Bhagavad Gita, you will find all these. I will take you two examples, two shlokas from chapter 8, Akshara Brahma Yoga, where all these are explained. These Upanishadic concepts are so beautifully explained in Bhagavad Gita. So let us see how the same idea is available in Bhagavad Gita. that the Brahman is the Nimitta Karanam and the Upadana Karanam, and that process is described in Gita in chapter 8. Look at here. Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Aharyad Brahmano Viduhu Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam Teho Ratra Vidojana. Sahasra Yuga cycles, 1,000 Yuga cycles. See, one Yuga cycle is 43,20,000 hours, years, sorry. 43,20,000 years. So multiply it by 1,000. So it becomes 4.32 into 10 power 9 it will go to, because 43 lakhs is 10 power 6. Now you are multiplying by another 1,000, so it will become 10 power 9. So we are talking about 4.32 into 10 power 9 human years. That is the Sahasra Yuga Paryantam. Aharyad Brahmano Vidhu, that is the daytime of Brahman, Ahas. That Brahman, which is the Bhuta Yoni, that Brahman's 12 hours daytime, morning 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. of the Brahman's daytime is 4.32 into 10 power 9 human years. Just imagine. Then Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam. So then another 1,000 Yuga cycles is the night time of Brahman. So one day of Brahma is 2,000 Yuga cycles, not Yugas, Yuga cycles. I mean, one Yuga cycle is Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga put together. That is what that 43,20,000 years actually. So, Ahoratra Vido Janaha, those who understand night and day of Brahma actually understands this is what it is. That's what that mantra is saying, that Shloka 17 is saying. Now Shloka 18. Avyaktad Vyaktayas Sarvaha Prabhavanti Aharagame Ratryagame Praliyante Tatraiva Vyakta Samyake. Avyaktad, from unmanifested. Spider did not show you the web. It was unmanifested. It suddenly came. Abhyaktat Vyaktayaha Sarva Prabhavanti. Out of nothing, it appears like that. Out of nothing meaning out of no manifestation, out of a state of unmanifestation, then it gets into a state of manifestation during the daytime of the Brahman. That's what the first line says. Ratriyagame praliyante. While the night time of the Brahman comes, it withdraws everything. Just like yatornanabihi, srijate grinnate cha. This is the grinnate part. Ratriyagame, once the night comes, praliyante, everything pralaya, everything dissolves. Everything gets back to the state of unmanifestation. This is exactly this first analogy is saying. This is exactly the spider example is saying that the Brahman will bring everything out of it during one day time, which is and play out 1,000 Yuga cycles through that. After playing 1,000 Yuga cycles through that, it will absorb everything into it. And that is why the spider example is brought in Mundakopanishad. And it says the spider example is telling us that there is only a one source called Brahman. And the Brahman is both the Nimitta Karana and Upadana Karana. And the Brahman can manifest and unmanifest. Srijate Grinnate cha. That is the charm of the first analogy. Then comes the, and of course there are two more shlokas. Let me finish it. Bhuta gramasa evayam bhutva bhutva praliyate ratriyagame vashapartha prabhavatyaharagame. This bhuta grama, grama is a collection or a group. The group of bhutas, not human beings, bhutas, which means all entities of the universe. Eva ayam bhutva bhutva praliyate. It comes and goes in the manner described in Shloka 8:18. Ratriyagame praliyate. Avashaha, they have no control. They cannot control it. Prabhavati aharagame. Again, when the daytime comes, it comes out. So it manifests, unmanifests. Brahman puts it out, but takes it in. And it is uncontrollable by the entities. The control is not with the entities. Avashaha, that's what it says. Paras tasmatu bhavonyah avyakto vyaktat sanatanaha yassa sarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu na vinashyati. Paraha tasmatu, out of all these, there is anyaha bhavaha, which is avyakta, which is not manifesting itself directly. Vyakta avyaktat sanatanaha. Avyaktaha avyaktat sanatanaha. It is unmanifested and it is of avyaktat, whatever was unmanifested, manifested, it is beyond that. Sanatanaha sarveshu bhuteshu nashyati. See, the spider actually absorbs the web. Spider does not get destroyed. The spider throws the web. Spider does not become smaller because it threw some web out of it. Purnamada purnamidam purnat purnamadachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnameva vasishyate. So nashyatsu na vinashyati. While the web may get destroyed, but the spider will not get destroyed. So those kinds of ideas are all contained in Bhagavad Gita in Akshara Brahma Yoga. Let's go to the second analogy. And the second analogy is Yata Prithvyam Oshadayaha Sambhavanti. So you have this Mother Earth, out of which what kind of flora? I mean, if you get into the Arctic region, you find evergreen, you find the biodiversities of a different kind. Then you go to, tropical region, it has a very rich biodiversity. So there are thousands and trillions of trees, flowers, manifestations. All of them come from, there are very few exceptions. Some plants can grow in water and all that. But by and large, the whole world of reality comes out of a source called Prithvi. It all depends on, you open the Prithvi and dig up the Prithvi and put a seed. The Prithvi actually brings it out. The seed needs the Prithvi to grow. It is the Prithvi which actually brought it out. Because if Prithvi is not required, you can keep the seed on the table, it should become a tree. Very few seeds, very rarely it happens. Even they don't sustain. It may sprout, after that it will die. So it is Prithivyam Oshadayaha Sambhavanti. The plant kingdom is shooting out of the earth. The earth is the support for very different varieties of trees and herbs, etc., etc. All kinds of entire plant kingdom, right, comes out of the earth. So what do we infer from this analogy? It says the universe, in a sense, shoots out of the Brahman only, just as all plants, Oshadi Vanaspatayaha, Sarve, Prithvyad Bahihi Sambhavanti. Just like that, the universe with all its multiplicity of creation shoots out of the Brahman only. And the second message that it gives is Brahman sustains, beholds, and supports the entire universe of beings. This is the second implication of this analogy. Just as the Mother Earth, that's why Earth is called Dharini, because Dhru Dharane means behold and support. That's why Mother Earth is called Dharini. Dharini is one which can support and behold everything, not only the plants and trees. It also, supports all nonsense we are doing by digging up the earth and all kinds of things that we are doing. So the Brahman sustains, beholds, and supports the entire universe of beings. That is what this second analogy is actually informing us. And it clearly tells us that there can be a single source. In the first analogy, we said the single source can be both Nimitta Karana and Upadana Karana. The second example is saying, because spider brings only one type of web, so that example is not enough. The second example is saying that out of that single source, you can get a variety of things. You can get all kinds of variety of things can come out of that single source. And that is what this analogy is saying. I think it is 6 o'clock now. We need to stop here. We will look at the third analogy and continue this journey in our next class. I think we will stop here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shubharati.